Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to the epic 9th Winter 2025-20 update from GavsWeatherVids. So here we go again, we're going to bring you more winter data. We're up to update number 9. This will be penultimate update in our series of winter updates. Just got one more to do, the 10th winter update next Sunday will be the final winter update of this season. There's going to be a season one roundup next weekend as well, next Saturday, get all of the long range ones together. The GavsWeatherVids Winter 2025-26 forecast will be released on Wednesday, the 3rd of December, so it'll be a week on Wednesday. That's where we're releasing the winter forecast. We'll try and premiere that for you as well. Going to be absolutely epic, and I can't wait to unleash winter forecast on you. But I've got a couple of winter updates to go, including this one, and I'll get on with your night winter update in a moment. Just say there wasn't a 6 a.m. forecast today. So busy doing this very late, nearly 20 to 1 in the morning of Sunday, the 23rd of November. So I've got to get this recorded, uploaded. Haven't got time to do 6 a.m. forecast. Hopefully that will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much, Ricardo. Thanks so much, Richard, for our lovely winter updates gear. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you so much to Shryan. And also, thank you so much to Terry. Hashtag Team Gab. Doing an amazing job. Thank you so much, everyone. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is have a look at the Swingometer. So, from the King of the Swingers, from King of Swing, Richard Short, this is how the Swingo is currently looking after, or as of, up to, and after the 8th winter update. So, in 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1... there we go. So are we predicting a cold or a mild winter? What are winter updates saying? Let's have a look, let's have a look, let's look, let's have a look, let's have a look. There we see it, 52% cold, 48% mild. So the winter updates as of the end of the 8th winter update last week, suggesting a 52% chance of a cold winter, 40% chance of a mild winter. That is a swing from mild to cold. From the 8th winter update, or for the 8th winter update. So, I think at the end of 7th winter update, it was like 50-50. That's a slight swing there from mild to cold. 48% mild, 52% cold. We're just about favouring cold and average winter. You will find out at the beginning of next week's 10th winter update how this 9th winter update affects the Swingo, if indeed it does. Thank you so much to the King of Swing, Richard Short. So to the King of the Swingers, Richard, for sending that through to us. Unbelievable. Thank you so much, my friend. Right, we're going to start off with the Atlantic hurricane season then for this one. So far this season, these are the scores on the doors, Miss Four. We have had 13 total depressions, 13 tropical storms, 5 hurricanes, and 4 major Category 3 or above hurricanes. There are how the numbers are shaping up. How we're looking for ACE. Master Schreienbrunn has calculated that for us. So we come down through the decades, the centuries, and whatnot, the years, until we get to 2025, and we see that accumulated cyclone energy ACE for this hurricane season is currently at 132.60. I think that is unchanged on last week. Again, after 13 tropical storms, 5 hurricanes, and 4 major Category 3 or above hurricanes. That means we have had an above normal season, or having an above normal season. It's coming to the end now, of course. So at this point in the season, you'd expect us to be at 120.60 for ACE. That will be after 14 tropical storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 majors. So slightly above average hurricane season looks like is where we're going to end up for ACE, and also for the overall numbers. So, reanalysis time. Here we go. This is how winters are looking. This is how winters are looking following above average hurricane seasons for accumulated cyclone energy for ACE. And we're starting off with 1951, 1952. So the 1951 hurricane season, to explain this a bit, the 1951 hurricane season for the Atlantic was above average, had an above average accumulated cyclone energy, And so then we follow that through, see what the winter of 1951, 1952 was like. And that will be the case for all of the years you see within this set of analogues. So this winter has high pressure out in the Atlantic, low pressure is away to our north and east, and we bring the wind in from more of a northwesterly direction. So rather cool winter, I think, for 51, 52, with some pretty pokey cold snaps coming through at times. Like 1966, 1967, this is one of the milder winters of the 1960s. Many of them were cold. This one doesn't have all that much in the way of cold. A few cold snaps here and there maybe, but I think that's probably one of the mildest winters of the 1960s there. We got 2000, 2001. This is almost a cold winter for all of us, and was a cold winter for Scotland, with winds in from the east, blocking the area of high pressure to green ice and low pressure down here. And even down the south, this winter does actually have some quite potent cold snaps as well at times. So for the era, late 90s, early 2000s, 2000, 2001, was actually a colder winter for all of us, did have some snow, even down to lowland southern England, and was particularly cold for Scotland. We've got 0809, again, above average hurricane season, this one, and we see high pressure up towards Scandinavia, low pressure down to south, winds in from an easterly direction. So that begins the run of colder winters from 0809 to 2012, 2013, and that does follow an above average hurricane season for ACE as well, particularly cold in the first half of February 2009. 2011, 2012, next one, and this one takes most of the cold over towards Eastern Europe, frozen in the Balkans. We're kind of protected from all of that cold weather, but we do have one very cold spell, which happens in early February. And then we've got 2012, 2013. This might be our last genuinely cold winter in all areas, not sure, but has blocking area of high pressure to the north and low pressure to the south, winds in from the east. This one just gets colder and colder and colder as it goes along, really, and culminates in our coldest March since I think about 1883. Unbelievable. 2016, 2017 is a winter to forget. High pressure parking itself over top of Western Europe, so not much going on in that winter. We've got 2018, 2019. Also, not a lot going on. Does have a very warm spell at the end of February, though, with winds in from the south. Bit of a January cold snap, but not much to remember about that winter. I think most memorable for the very, very warm end to February. Then we've got the polar vortex of doom at winter. Oh dear. 2019, 2020. Loads of low pressure in the North Atlantic, high pressure down across southern Europe, and winds coming up from the southwest. So, of course, that is storm after storm after storm after storm. And a very wet winter as well, but exceptionally mild for 2019. 2020. 2021, 2022 is our next winter following an above average hurricane season. It all looked good up to Christmas of 2021, but then the cold Christmas fell apart and the rest of the winter was very mild. 2023, 2024, again, not much to remember about that winter. Low pressure through here, higher pressure down there. Some cold snaps, I think, but pretty much forgotten. Right, so putting all that together, miss out all December's combined are looking following above average hurricane seasons for ACE, accumulated cyclone energy, with low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south. It's a mild westerly signal for these Decembers. All January's combined tends to have higher pressure just out to our west. Much of northern and central eastern Europe being engulfed by a trough, so presumably a lot of cold air plunging southwards to northern and east Europe. Again, we're kind of protected a lot of the time from all of that. And then all February's combined following above average hurricane seasons for ACE, showing high pressure through west of Europe. And again, probably a relatively mildish type signal there to be honest. All winters combined following above average hurricane seasons for ACE sees higher pressure down towards Spain, and winds tend to be coming in from a westerly direction there. So overall, not a particularly inspiring set of analogues for coldness, but again, we've got 2012, 2013 in the mix, which was probably our last genuinely cold winter across the country, and, you know, got colder and colder and colder as it went along. Anyway, that's how those analogues are looking. Let's move on now and have a look at the Arctic oscillation. So this is how the AO observed and forecast is currently looking. So the black line shows where we've been with the Arctic oscillation. Red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. So at the moment, the Arctic oscillation is in a positive phase, but is forecast to go into weekly negative territory before the end of December, and then holding very close to neutral condition into the first week or so of December there. Overall, nothing overly dramatic going on with the AO. The NEO looks like this, so remember, when the NEO is in a positive phase, we've got low pressure around Iceland, high pressure around the Azores, and we strengthen that zonal west-southwesterly flow. When the NEO is negative, it's the reverse, so we don't necessarily get high pressure around Iceland and low pressure around the Azores, but we can do. But we certainly lower pressure around Iceland, and or raise, I should say, pressure around Iceland, and we lower it around the Azores, and that can be a cold signal, of course. Well, at the moment, the NEO is in weekly negative territory, predicted to go positive just before the turn of the month, and then drop back to neutral conditions there through the first week of December. Nothing overly dramatic going on with the AO and the NEO at the moment. The QBO, quasi-biennial oscillation, confirms again that we are in the easterly phase of the QBO and going to be for this winter. You see the eastern QBO there with those blue-green colours descending from the top of the atmosphere of stratospheric at 10 HPA down to a troposphere at 30 to 58 HPA. The next westerly QBO phase, by the way, is beginning to show its hand. The very top of the atmosphere in the strat. We won't be seeing that, though, until later into 2026. So for this winter, it will be an easterly QBO winter. Right, looking at the strat next. So this is how stratospheric temperatures are currently looking versus average from the JMA. So the black line here shows where we've been with the temperature at 10 HPA of stratosphere over North Pole against the grey line, which is the trend line. So we are now actually slightly above average with the temperature at 10 HPA. We've gone to about, I don't know, minus 67, something like that. At this point of the year, we'd expect to be under minus 70, so a few degrees above average there. Quite interesting. Going a bit lower down to 30 HPA. Well, they're seeing even more pronounced warm-up, which is rather unusual to see temperature becoming warmer at 30 HPA than it is at 10 HPA. So normally when we get a warmer stratosphere, it like propagates down from 10 to 30 HPA, but this is warmer lower down. So there we're around minus 60 at this point of the year. We'd expect to be about there, probably about minus 73, something like that. So more pronounced warming at 30 HPA, closer to the troposphere than we see for the stratosphere. So when we see, for 10 HPA, which is right at the top of the strat. Right, let's have a look at some forecast data then. So this is how the temperature forecast for 10 HPA over the Arctic and North Pole, current looking from the latest GFS. Well, I think it's a pub run, 18Z of the GFS. These blue colours, of course, are the cold temperatures at 10 HPA over the Arctic and the North Pole. That's the polar vortex at its roots in the pole. Okay, well, let's have a look and see what's predicted to happen. So quite a significant warming, which we've been talking about a lot recently, taking place there over Siberia. Significant for the time of the year, because this is like a cooling time of year. If this was in January or February, it wouldn't be anything to talk about, really, but like end of November, that's highly unusual to see that level of warming, that amount of warming of a stratosphere taking place over Siberia. And it's kind of moving into the North Pole as well, to some degree, certainly causing a displacement event of a stratospheric polar vortex. Notice how these blue-purple colours are being squashed out into the North Atlantic and into Northern Europe by this warming penetrating in from Siberia into the polar regions. Well, beyond that, we go into the extended range. This is how we're looking. So warming is continuing there over Siberia, quite interesting. The polar vortex, stratospheric polar vortex, after being displaced out of the pole, gradually starts to move its way, tries to move its way back into the pole again. That gets us to the 8th of December. Still quite a bit of warming going on over Siberia. But it's a slow burner, but it makes you wonder where things are going to be sort of by end of December into January there. Given that as winter goes along, it becomes more likely that you will, or not guaranteed, that we will see further warming events of the stratosphere. So the strat going to be, again, one to watch this season. Let's have a look at the temperature forecast before we go on to the solar wind. So currently we see above average temperatures. It's from the ECM weekly anomaly. Above average temperatures there over the Arctic and over the North Pole as well. That's week 1. This is week 2. Warming maintained there over the Arctic Pole, particularly the Canadian side of the Arctic, but falling just short of what would normally be a certain stratospheric warming event. Normally would have to go to those very deep as pink and yellow shaded colours. But it is a very significant warming for the time of the year. That's week 3. That's week 4, gradually starting to bring that temperature anomaly down. So by week 6, 29th of December to the 6th of January, then we've gone slightly cooler than average across most parts of the polar field there in the stratosphere at 10 HPA. But again, you know, that's 6 weeks away, and forecast data at that time frame always going to be relatively unreliable. So, last week we was flirting on this chart with a technical sudden stratospheric warming event. Although the temperature doesn't look like 10 HPA, doesn't look like it's getting towards SSW levels, or what would normally be SSW levels, because the zone of wind, which is telling us the strength of the stratospheric polar vortex, really, because the zone of wind is already quite weak, all it takes is that warm-up, maybe, to reverse the zone of wind. And a technical SSW, a technical sudden stratospheric warming event, is simply defined as a reversal of zone of wind at 10 HPA, 60 degrees north. And that could be like a displacement event or a split event of the polar vortex. Doesn't matter. All that matters is that the zone of wind reverses. So we see on the forecast from the ECM, but we are now just about predicting a reversal of zone of wind. So the current forecast is there. Current position is there. And by the time we get through to the end of November, yes, very briefly, the zone of wind looks like it's being predicted to go into reverse there, with a lot of the ECM ensemble blue members. The ensemble mean, which is a thick blue line, is hard to make out, but that does just about go into a reversal of zone of winds, goes to about 0 line. Probably only lasts for 24 hours, if that, but a technical SSW is being predicted there, I think, and that'll be the earliest sudden stratospheric warming event that we have ever recorded. Now, beyond that, we see that through the first half of December, we get the zone of wind picking back up again, but not really going back to, like, average situation. So an average zone of wind would be like where this red line is as well. And interestingly, we do see quite a few, well, not quite a few, but we do see a few ECM ensemble members by the end of December going for a much stronger reversal of zone of wind. So could it be maybe that this reversal of zone of wind end of November, beginning of December, it's just a teaser and, just the precursor to what could be a much more classic sudden stratospheric warming event and reversal of solar wind towards the end of December and maybe into the start of January, much more of a midwinter type SSW. At the moment, jury is out on that. Not a lot of evidence for that, but I would keep an eye on these stragglers just here, outliers, I guess, and see as the updates progress over the next couple of weeks, whether more and more of these ensemble plume members start going southwards in that direction. Going to be fascinating to see how the strat evolves again through this season, as always. Right, oceans data next. Pretty good bits, isn't it? Pretty good. Right, oceans data next. So this is how the oceans were looking when we did last week's 8th winter update. We've got our 4 interest areas, the ENSO region, Equatorial Pacific Ocean, just here, the northern and northeast Pacific just here, the Indian Ocean over there, and then the North Atlantic over there. That's how the oceans were looking last week. This is the latest. So in terms of the ENSO region, first of all, not sure there's been all that much more development in the ENSO region of the La Nina signature. Again, that's what we saw last week. This is what we see this week. So maybe this central and western region has seen things go a bit colder. Same time, the sea surface temperature anomalies may have picked up slightly in the eastern portion of the Equatorial Pacific Ocean. We see a La Nina signature there, most definitely, but it is a very weak one, and whether this La Nina is ever designated is open to a lot of doubt and question. Going northwards into the North Pacific, again, that situation last week. This situation this week, colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies in the northeast Pacific, possibly have weakened slightly, but are still in evidence. In the Indian Ocean, again, we see that negative IOD signature with cooler than average sea surface temperature there, warmer through there, split down the middle of the Indian Ocean. The cold negative phase of the IOD, though, is starting to weaken and should revert to neutral, I think, maybe slightly positive as the winter progresses. And then in the North Atlantic, this is how the Atlantic was looking last week. This, again, is the latest. So not much change there. We continue to see warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies south of Greenland, going southwards through there, and then it tends to look a bit cooler through there. Not classic tripole signature, because you will want for that the sea surface temperature anomalies off the eastern side of America, of the seaboard of America and up to Canada, to be colder than that, really. But it is a little bit of a tripole-esque type signature that we have there, I think, which is quite interesting. Overall, the Atlantic, again, as we've seen over many years, just generally in quite a warm state. Next week, we're going to go through the sea surface temperature anomaly charts right way back to 1985. See if we can pick out the closest matches to this year, to 2035. We'll do that one last time for you next week. This is the 7-day change, or the 7-day trend. In the Equatorial Pacific Ocean, we can see that, yes, it did warm generally over the past 7 days. In the eastern portion, maybe a bit more cooler in the western portion. In the North Pacific, most areas cooling, but did warm slightly through there. Indian Ocean just generally warming in most areas. And then in the North Atlantic, again, quite interesting cooling around here. Warming weekly through there, and more definitively through there. Again, that looks to me like a little bit of tripole signature. Let me know in the comments whether you think we might have a weak tripole emerging in the Atlantic. As far as ENSO, La Nina, is concerned, this is how the Southern Oscillation Index is looking. Remember, the SOI is just measuring air pressure between Darwin and Tahiti, not driving anything in its own terms. Just tells us what the atmospheric setup is doing in Darwin and Tahiti, and then coming up with an overall SOI number. So when the SOI is positive, the atmospheric setup will be reflective of La Nina. SY is negative, then the atmospheric setup will be reflective of El Nino. We're seeing some very positive numbers now. So 17th of November, SY plus 19, 18th of November, plus 27, 19th of November, plus 38, exceptionally positive. SOI, and the 31st of November plus 31 as well, 21st of November plus 26, 22nd of November plus 31. These are very, very strongly positive numbers. The atmospheric setup is now strongly and definitively in a La Nina type state, and if that continues, then we will see a further powering and maturing of that La Nina signal in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So SOI, tells us that the atmosphere is well and truly in the La Nina state. Whether that La Nina boat ever gets designated, because it's got to run over 5 tri-monthly periods at a half a degree or more below average, that is the big question. The 30-day SY average is lifting up, so we're currently up here close to plus 18 now, quite strongly positive with the SY from about plus 8 at the end of October. CFSV2 is looking like this. So again, we've got our temperature odometer on the side, dates in monthly periods along the bottom. So again, we are having a weak La Nina. Currently, we're around there, between half degree, 1 degree below average. We keep that situation going into January, and then gradually that weak La Nina comes back up to go slightly above average by the time we get through to spring and summer. Maybe even hinting at a bit of an El Nino setting up next year, because that is quite speculative. Again, is that enough to get the La Nina designated? So we reached half degree below average in October. That's January, where we're going back to above half degree below average. So again, whether that's quite enough to get this La Nina designated, I'm not sure. It may end up being an undesignated La Nina, and therefore officially an ENSO neutral but of a cold side winter. But time will tell. Right, we'll have a little break there, and then when we come back, we can look at Eurasian snow cover. So I shall see you very shortly for a continuation of the 9th Winter 2025-26 update. GavsWeatherVids. See you soon, everyone. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to resume the 9th Winter 2025-26 update from GavsWeatherVids. If you've enjoyed what you've witnessed so far, then please can you like, share, and subscribe, and thank you so much, everyone, for doing that for us. Thank you so much to Ricardo, the King of Swing, Richard Shaw. Thank you so much to Scully and Shrine Broom for all of help on not just this, but all of our winter updates. Amazing job, guys. Thank you so much. Right, okay, well, we're going to have a look at Eurasian snow cover next. I've got one more set of analogs to bring you as well, by the way. So, this is how Eurasian snow cover was looking when we did last week's 8th winter update. So, the snow line was just here, and that's how much of Scandinavia and Nordic regions was covered in snow. And this is belated, so we have seen quite a significant expansion of snow cover through the northern portion of Western Russia, like northwestern Russia. Interestingly, most parts of Scandinavia and Nordic regions are covered. You've got to go down to the far south of Norway and Sweden to find areas that don't have any snow cover. All of Finland looks like it's covered. Most of Sweden is covered. Most of Norway covered in snow as well. Now, what's happened over the past week has been quite dramatic in terms of the increase in snow cover. Now, we even see some snow cover across the UK, which is quite unusual. Oh, in Western Russia, away from the northwest, not much in the way of snow, but same is true for much of Eastern Europe as well. But we do see some snow there across parts of Northern England and Scotland, which again is quite unusual for that to happen. So, a bit of a bizarre few days. Well, let's have a look now anyway and see how we're comparing to this point, 22nd of November in years past. So, starting with 2024, we are behind 2024 for snow cover across Russia, a very equally matched though across Scandinavia and Nordic regions, maybe a little bit ahead though in those areas. That is 2023. They're behind 2023 for Russian snow cover, but perhaps ahead of it for Scandinavian snow cover. That's 2022. We're behind 2022 in all areas, Scandinavia, Nordic and Europe and Western Russia as well. So we are behind that year. That is 2021. What do you make of that one? Well, we're behind 2021 for Russian snow cover, but ahead of it for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. And this one is 2020, so again we're probably behind 2020 in totality for Russian snow cover, though the areas covered are different. Ahead again though for Scandinavia and Nordic snow cover. And then that is 2019, so what do you make of that one? Are probably quite closely matched to that year, actually ahead though I think for Scandinavia and Nordic. And then that is 2018. Again, what are you making of that one? So probably behind that year for Russian snow cover, but way ahead of it for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. It's interesting, isn't it? That's 2017. So probably behind 2017 for totality across Russia. And a little bit behind for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover, though not all that much in it. That's a very close match, I think, 2017. The current situation for Scandinavia and Nordic regions. That's 2016, behind 2016 for Russian snow cover, but ahead for Scandinavia and Nordic snow cover. And then that is 2015, behind that in most areas as well. Right, that's 2014. We're ahead of 2014 for this point of the year for all areas, actually. So doing a lot better at this point than we was in 2014. And that is 2013. So ahead of 2013 for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. And, well, probably quite closely matched for Russian snow cover, but areas covered are rather different. And then that is 2012, where I think we're ahead of 2012, particularly for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. And this one is 2011, way ahead of 2011 for Scandinavia and Nordic regions, probably behind though for Russian snow cover. And that is 2010. So we're behind 2010 in all areas. Of course, but December, to remember, was looming at this point in 2010. Though note, much of Scotland, Northern England was still snow-free at this point, 22nd of November 2010. Wouldn't be for much longer. We are ahead of 2009 for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover, behind for Russian snow cover. That's 2008, so we stretch the snow all the way to Germany and eastern France at this point, 2008. So behind for Russian and European snow cover, but ahead for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. That one doing things a little bit differently. Similar though, 2007, so behind 2007 for European Russian snow cover, probably ahead both Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. And then that is 2006, behind that one for Russian snow cover, ahead of it Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. That is 2005, so behind that year for Russian and European snow cover, but for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover ahead. And then that is 2004, similar story, behind for Russian and European snow cover, ahead for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. 2003, behind that year for Russian snow cover, but ahead of it for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. So we're doing really well now for Scandinavian, Nordic snow cover. Not so good still. It was happening throughout the season for Russian snow cover. That is 2002. So with that year, well, probably a bit behind for Russian snow cover in totality. Maybe a bit ahead, though, for Scandinavian snow cover. And this one is 2001. So, again, interesting. Ahead of that for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover. Behind for Russian and European, Eastern European snow cover, 2000. So, that could be a closer match in totality for Russia, but perhaps a bit behind it. But again, ahead for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover this year. And then that is 1999. We are way behind 1999 for Russian and also European snow cover. We got snow all the way down to France, southern France, blimey, even into Spain at this point. That's mountainous areas, of course. But so all the way down to Spain at this point in 1999. Though, again, note for Scandinavia, Nordic region, so Norway, Sweden, and Finland, we've got more snow this year in those areas than we had in 1999, which is quite striking. And then 1998, finally, for these charts. So we're behind 1998 for Russian European snow cover, ahead for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. Same story. Right, let's go even further back than that. So we won't do year-by-year comparisons now, but just keeping in mind what's happened over the past week. So the snow line through northern parts of western Russia has reached the gates of Europe now. Still snow-free though down here, which does make it quite difficult to ascertain what years are ahead and behind for totality. And hold on. Oh gosh, my ribs are still very sore. And for Scandinavia, although a lot better than we were last week, as you can probably tell, I'm a lot more buoyant this week than I was when I did the 8th winter update. And that's how things look for like Scandinavia, Nordic regions, most areas away from the far south of Norway and Sweden, covered in snow. Right, so let's go through. So this is 1997. We're behind 1997, I think, in all areas. That is 1996. That's very similar, isn't it? That's interesting. That is very, very similar to the current situation. Note how the snow line is kind of pushed westwards into the far northwest of Russia. Most parts of Scandinavia, Nordic regions are covered, and so away from the far south. But we see this snow-free area across southern parts of Russia. Is that a match? Is that a match? I said I was going to do year-by-year comparison, but is that a match for that? Stand on your head and see what you think. I reckon that is, like, pretty decent, actually. That could be the match, 1996, which of course was a very interesting Christmas and New Year, but we won't go into that. Let's go on to 1995. So we're behind 1995, particularly for Russian snow cover, probably quite similar to Scandinavia and Nordic snow cover. And then that is 1994, behind that year for Russian snow cover, probably ahead of it though, Scandinavian snow cover. That's 1993, behind that year for Russian and European snow cover, so we've got all the way to France at this point in 93, though we're ahead for Scandinavia and Nordic snow cover. That's 1992, behind that year in all areas, I think. That's 1991, so behind that year for Russian snow cover, probably a bit ahead of Scandinavian Nordic snow cover, and this is 1990. So ahead of 1990, particularly for Russian, for Scandinavian, I should say, and Nordic snow cover. And then that's 1989, behind that year for Russian and European snow cover. I forgot about that, but snow got all the way into France at this point. 1989 meant nothing for the winter, of course, it was a very mild winter. But probably a bit ahead for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. And then this one is 1988, so ahead of that year for Scandinavian, Nordic snow cover, behind it for Russian snow cover. But it's 1987, behind that year for Russian snow cover, ahead of Scandinavian snow cover. That's 1986, probably a bit behind 1986 for Russian snow cover, way ahead both for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. And 1985, same is true, we're behind that year for Russian and European snow cover, but ahead of it for Scandinavian snow cover. That's 1984, behind that year for Russian snow cover, maybe quite close to matching totality though, but way ahead for Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover. Interesting. That's 1984. And we're behind that year for Russian European snow cover, ahead of it though, Scandinavian snow cover. That's 1982. Probably quite closely matched. Russian snow cover in totality, ahead again this year of 1982 Scandinavian snow cover. 1981 behind that year, probably in all areas. 1980, so behind that year for Russian snow cover, maybe ahead for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover. We're ahead of 1979 for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover too. Note much of southern Russia in the west was snow-free, though at this point that could be a closer match in terms of what's happening across Russia. 1978, check that one out. Probably a little bit ahead of that year, Scandinavian and Nordic snow cover, but probably quite closely matched also totality for Russian snow cover. That's interesting. That's 1977. Behind that year for Russian snow cover, head for Scandinavian snow cover. 1976, again, probably behind that Russian snow cover, could be quite close for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover. 1975 looks like that, so I think we're ahead of that year for Scandinavian snow cover, probably quite close for Russian snow cover in totality. That is 1974. Probably behind that year slightly for Russian for Scandinavian, Russian and also Nordic snow cover, actually behind that year in all areas maybe. 1973, so behind that year for Russian snow cover, ahead of it for Scandinavian Nordic snow cover. 1972, probably behind in all areas, not much in it though, Scandinavian Nordic regions anyway. 1971, again behind that year. 1970, we're behind that year, particularly in all areas. 1969, looks like that, so behind it for Western Russia, but probably slightly ahead for Scandinavia and those all-important Nordic regions. And 1968, probably behind that year, particularly for Russia and European snow cover. 1967, penultimately looks like that, so way ahead of that year for Scandinavia and Nordic regions. And then finally, we've got 1966, again, ahead of that for Sweden, in particular those Scandinavian areas, but going to Russia, probably a little bit behind. So I would say, like in past week, we're doing better, again, for Russian snow cover, particularly in the north. Maybe it's lagging behind quite a few years still, though. But for Scandinavia and Nordic regions, we are doing really quite well. Actually, I have done really quite well. We're ahead of many of those years. Is Scandinavia and Nordic areas more important than Russia? That's the question. Is that going to help us get a Scandinavian high going and send it to Scandi? I wonder. Right, let's just have a look at some re-analysis before we go there. So again, back to the Schreier sorting these out for us. So Schreier has attempted to come up with the closest matches for Eurasian snow cover in the month of October to October 2025. These are the years the winters has come up with. So we've got October 1993, yielding the winter of 93-94, with a low pressure in from the Atlantic. So that was a very wet 1990 winter, but did have some pokey cold snaps at times, particularly late December and on and off through February. 2001-2002 was a classic front-loaded winter, cold in December, particularly around Christmas and the New Year, and then gets milder, dry, mild January after freezing cold start, and then a very wet, very mild February in 2002. 2003-2004 looked like it should be a cold winter. It wasn't particularly cold. Was across central, northern, eastern parts of Europe. We're protected by that area of high pressure. There were some cold snaps coming and going though, and again particularly late February in 2004. 2004-2005 is a similar story. Actually, again, we see that ridge in the Atlantic, almost quite a cold winter, but not quite. So that one has an exceptionally mild start to January. First half of January 2005, exceptionally mild, a lot colder in the second half. Has a long cold snap between the middle of February and middle of March 2005. Does also have quite a nice white Christmas in 2004 across northern parts of the country and western areas. Overall, got to December to remember. 2010, 2011, October 2010. Very similar for Eurasian snow cover to October 2025. So this one, again, with blocking of high pressure around Greenland, low pressure to the south. Remember, but December to remember. Freezing cold, the coldest December since 1890 for CET. Coldest December on UK records beginning in 1910. Almost the coldest December within the entire CET index back to 1659. Just 0.1 or 0.2 of a degree off achieving that. And if a cold spell had run on just a couple of days longer, remember it fizzled out just after Christmas, if it had run on to the new year, that undoubtedly would have been the coldest December within the entire Central Temperature Index, the coldest December since records began for CT in 1659. Unbelievable. But also don't forget, but it did end up with an exceptionally mild February. So the ultimate front-loaded winter. We've got 2020, 2021, bit of a teaser winter, this one. High pressure up to the north, low pressure down south, winds coming in from an east or northeasterly direction. Was not a teaser for Scotland, was actually a really properly cold winter for Scotland. For Ireland, England and Wales, very much touch and go, but there were some cold snaps coming and going. And overall, perhaps one of the more interesting winters, but we've had certainly since 2012, 2013, from a cold perspective. 2022, 2023 looks like that coldest weather in that winter tended to be in the first half of December. When I was in New York looking for the cold, it was here. Otherwise, quite a mildish winter, I think. And then 2023, 2024, that one's back, looking like this, low pressure away to the east. A few cold snaps here and there, but again, not a particularly cold winter there. And 2024, 2025, last winter, looks like that. Tries to be a cold winter maybe, but doesn't really pull it off, though, as Mark Kanish will remind me, we did have some quite potent cold snaps at times through that winter, especially in January. But who can forget the failure of the easterly in February of 2005? Right, put all that together then. Miss out all December's combined are looking, following our closest matches for Eurasian snow cover in October. So, not bad actually if you want a colder December. Low pressure tending to be through there, a mid-Atlantic ridge. Going up to Greenland, winds in from the north. That looks pretty decent, doesn't it? For at least cold snaps in December. All January's combined are looking like this. Mid-Atlantic ridge, not quite a clear cut around Greenland for the blocking. Low pressure to the east. Again, you could envisage some very cold snaps coming and going through those Januaries. All February's combined, though, nowhere near as good as that. So high pressure down towards Italy and the Med, Spain, and whatnot. Winds coming up from southwesterly direction. Then there will be years that deviate with this, though. So, for example, we've got 1994, which had the coldest weather of that winter in February. And 2005 had that long run of cold, not desperately cold, but quite cold weather from mid-February to mid-March. So, as ever, you're always going to get deviations and exceptions to the norm with this. And all winters combined, finally, following our October Eurasian snow cover matches. Again, we see trough of low centred in the Baltic Sea. Higher pressure tend to be up towards Greenland, Iceland, winds in from the north. A lot of that is down to December. And don't forget, we have got relatively high pressure, though, through Spain and into the Med. As always, a complicating factor, because that is going to try and bring up mild air from the southwest. So, interesting. I'd say that's a better set for cold years than the first set. Anyway, the above average hurricane season. But there we go. We're done. So, if you enjoyed this 9th Winter 2025-26 update, please give us a like, share, subscribe, drop a comment, all that good stuff. And we thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much to Rich Short, to Shrine Bruin, and Terry Scolding for all of the help on this 9th Winter update and all of the winter updates that we have done, not just this year, but throughout the years. Even. Well, we've got one more winter update for you to do next week. The 10th winter update will be the final winter update of this season. We'll also have the second and final seasonal model roundup for you on Saturday next week as well. So 2 winter updates back to back next weekend. And then we've got winter forecast to release, probably, hopefully, I think almost certainly as a premiere on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. So we're nearly at crunch time now. We're nearly at the end of our journey to the winter forecast and to winter 25-26, but not quite there yet. Okay, well, if you enjoyed the vid, please like them, all that good stuff. Thanks so much for doing that. Thanks so much, hashtag Team Gav, and we'll end it there. So, 48 minutes. Another epic. That's all for now. And thanks for watching.